We're good.
Good morning. Welcome to Facebook Live. I'm Kim Martino Sexton, and I'm here with my partner at Heartland PMAD Consultants, Elizabeth Lauder. And today we have a special guest with us. Welcome, Shannon.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Shannon Hayes has her own practice called Hayes Nutrition, and I'll be linking it in the comments so you guys can check out her Facebook page. But I've known Shannon for years. I've done some work with her and we've become friends over the years. And I'm so excited to get to chat with her about what she does because it's so relevant to all of the moms that all of the providers that work with Heartland work with. Does that make sense? If you're working with moms, you need to hear what Shannon has to say because it can really help you frame the work that you're doing when you hear moms talk about anything from, you know, body image to just healthy eating to not feeling well to all of it, right? So we're really excited to have you. So Kim, I'm gonna let
pleasure.
you. Yeah, I'm gonna start sharing some stuff so our friends can know that we're live.
Great.
Why don't we, go ahead,
Shannon, tell us a little bit about, so we know that you work in nutrition, but what I loved about when I was just, stalking you a little bit and reading up on you, it says you specialize in intuitive eating. Can you share with us a little bit about what does that mean when we're talking about intuitive nutrition and eating?
Yeah, so intuitive eating is a very anti-diet approach to food. So it's very much learning to listen to your body. And when we look at our diet culture, we're taught not to listen. We're taught to follow the plan, eat what we're told, follow the schedule of what the meal or what the plan might tell us. And what intuitive eating does is it helps to set those plans, rules aside and to help the process of learning to listen within. So within this process, we're looking at, do you recognize hunger? Do you recognize fullness? Are you able to tell what foods make you satisfied? And with that then is working on the permission with foods. So if like you have these forbidden foods that you might cycle on and off with, those can be foods that actually, if you had them, you'd be satisfied, but like you eat around them because you're not allowing yourself to have those foods. And within this process of learning to listen to your body, learning to listen to what your body's saying it needs, we're also looking at how are you respecting your body? How are you talking about your body? How are you moving your body? So in the movement end, it's really helping to shift it to be that movement is about the health of your body and care of your body versus it being punitive or punishing or making to shrink it, to change it. It's really helping to shift it to be more about the well-being of your mind, body, soul versus it just being the physical context of body.
So it makes me think of like, oh, I have to go work out versus I get to move my body and I get to take a walk or I get to ride my bike or whatever it is.
Right. It's so like it'd be kind of looking at like what's behind the have to. Like I'm always big like what's the why? What's the why you're doing something? So is the I have to go work out because then that gives you permission to eat? Is it to undo what you ate the day before or earlier in that day? Is it because then that makes you feel like checked in and like good with your body versus just like what you just said versus looking at like I'm so grateful I can move my body in this way. It feels good to move my body in this way. I'm connected in my body. And that's a big one is learning to be in body versus out of our body. And then criticizing. It's really helping to that is a big hurdle because we live in a society that puts living outside your body and promotes more business of changing body, what's your body look like trying to hit to the norm and looking at the weight stigma that exists in our society. So it's very easy to be out versus when we're dropping in, those things might feel like, well, does that even count? Is that even enough? Like it's all these things that we're met with.
Yeah. So how do you do, well, first tell us about your practice and what kind of capacity people can work with you? Are you hearing me okay?
So
okay.
I mostly do one-on-one sessions.
Mhm.
Yeah. The screen is frozen, but I can hear you. Okay.
Okay, good. We can hear you. We can see you.
I mostly do one-on-one sessions, but okay. Am I back on?
Yeah.
You're on.
Okay.
You
I'm like,
freeze sometimes, but so far we've been able to hear you.
okay. I all of a sudden it paused, and so okay. So right now I mostly do one-on-one sessions. I'm really trying to incorporate more group work in my practice, because I think that there's such a healing component of group of women and or as well as men, but the most of the people I see are women. In doing more of that. So like in August, I'm going to be doing an online group that's all about looking at food in quarantine and what came up. Really being able to process that, and then also look at using the intuitive eating workbook to really help foster just a healthier relationship with food and body.
Mm-hmm. So it's mostly one-on-one work, but you're starting to do more and more groups.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I mean, some of it, I'm very fortunate, like that I'm busy. And so I want to be able to help more people. And that's my capacity is limited because of my work. I have 4 kids. So it's the balancing act of life. But I feel personally, just from being in groups, just the healing that can happen when you are around a group, and just being the space being held and being understood, and that that you have people who understand where you are. I think there's a huge piece that we can learn from each other versus it just being from a one-on-one.
Mm-hmm. I think the groups hold a power. It's like exponentially more powerful than this,
Yes.
one-on-one. It's magical. I love doing groups. So I'm glad to hear that that's part of your practice.
Yep. Yeah.
And so, Shannon, as a mom of 4, and tell us how old your kids are.
So I have a 10-year-old daughter, Lucy, 8-year-old son, Hayes. So he has my maiden name. And then a 6-year-old son, Matthew, and a 3-year-old daughter, Cece.
So as we're talking about, because what Elizabeth and I do is work with moms all the time, and all our providers do. And so from that mom standpoint, and as you've been living through, as we all have through the last, I forget how many weeks it is, however long we've been
like
quarantined, 16 or 17 now or something. And so as we're thinking about, just this whole mom life and what it's been like, and then trying to take care of our families and ourselves, and what are some things that have been helpful to you, and what are you hearing from the moms you're working with in terms of what are they doing to take care of themselves around this whole, whether it's so intuitive eating or just self-care, because it's a bit of a struggle, I'm hearing.
It is.
Across the board with all the moms that I'm working with. And so I think any insight you have into little things we can do, or tips or strategies, would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're right, because there's like no break now. Like you're just surrounded by your children.
It's 24/7 parenting, and it's freaking exhausting.
It's exhausting. Yeah, and that's actually come up so much with my clients, like especially the emotional eating, because it's like an escape. Like I have one client that we talk about, like she'll be like shoveling chocolate chips in her face, and it's like, but I just get to be one with the chocolate chips, and it's like just this 5-second retreat of like, it's mine. So I think that, what I have found for me, as well as my work with clients, is to look at where can you carve out some space for you. And that might just be 30 minutes. Maybe it's longer, ideally, if it can be. Some of it is if you're able to ask your partner for that space, and like mama's happy, everyone's happy. So we
say that all the time.
Yes. So, and I also think it's really important of modeling to your kids. Like I have, every morning I meditate and I do some type of movement, and I've practiced with my kids kind of coming at me to just show them, like, I'm setting this boundary, like mom needs this time, and then I'll be with you. And understanding that they're going to push the boundary, but how important it is to hold that space for yourself versus like, okay, well, I'll just go give you the bowl of cereal or whatever. It's just like, you can wait 30 minutes until I'm done. So I think that part is an important piece of just how you're teaching your kids that modeling of space and how it's okay to take up space. It's okay to take care of yourself, even when you're in the midst of the busyness of the family and everyone's relying on mom. It's okay to, you can be okay because I need to take care of me. So I think the biggest part is to look at the ways in which you do that, like whether that's through movement, whether that's just through mindfulness, whether that's just for sitting and reading a book or watching Netflix, whatever you need to kind of just have that escape into self, I think is a really important piece. And to look at, like, again, like I think that can be a very beautiful modeling to your kids, even if they're too young to understand it, it's still making an imprint.
I like that concept of like taking up space. And, you know I've read several pieces of literature that you've recommended to me, and I know you've written about it as well on your website, and I've posted links on the Facebook Live, so folks can check that out. But for somebody that's never heard of that concept of like, or I mean, not to overgeneralize, but maybe for men who like don't even know that that's a thing that women think about, can you like just tease that out a little bit?
Yeah. So taking up space is saying I matter. It's, I need to insert myself in in life. So it would be saying, and a lot of this is it can be boundary work. It's saying I need to go and do this, and even though there's like, no mom, you can't do that, or there's like maybe the huffing from the partner that's like, ugh, I have to deal with the kids, it's kind of like, yep, you do. I am moving on. Yes. Or even just being okay that your kids are upset, that your kids are, I think that part's this piece of, we can tend to get layered with guilt of like, oh, I'm screwing them up. They're feeling like I'm not meeting their needs. Like, and so then of course I will take care of you and sidestep mine. And I think that's this part of where we can take care of them beautifully, but we have to take care of ourselves. So I think that the taking up space is, I'm going to ask for what I need and I'm going to take what I need. And that's not selfish. That's not, I think that's just that there's so much stigma around that I think a lot of women just really struggle with, and especially moms, that they, before they have kids, there's all this time and they can take up all the space that they want for the most part. And then the kids kind of gobble it up. And so I think that's just the lesson of a mom. The lesson of a mom is, how do I balance myself? How do I balance my self-care? Because I think that's where we can see more of the signs of anxiety, of depression, of emotional eating, just not inserting yourself.
Yeah, and if we're ignoring our needs and wants in certain areas of our life, like if we're constantly sacrificing for our kids because we feel like we should, or that's a sacrifice we're willing to make or whatever. But if we're constantly sacrificing, I mean, this seems like common sense, or it seems like silly to say it out loud, but I know the three of us see it all the time. And I mean, I've experienced it. If we're constantly sacrificing, we're going to build up resentment. We're going to be freaking exhausted. We're going to be pissed. We're going to be, and so tell us, I'm a mental health clinician. Kim does a lot of peer support. And I know you have a mental health background with this nutrition focus. So it's like, can you make that link for us about how, like, if I'm always sacrificing and I'm pissed and I'm resentful and I'm essentially being quiet and I think that's the antithesis of the staying small, right? Is like, do you find yourself just constantly saying, that's okay, backing up, being quiet, just putting up with stuff? Like, that's the opposite of taking up space, right?
Totally.
I mean, I don't know if you say it in a different way.
No, it's spot on.
Yeah. So like, how does that affect moms, women, people? But how does that affect our mental health and our relationship to food, which is
so
we're talking about.
That's the typical is then kids are in bed, I'm sitting and I am just zoning and eating. I'm finding these moments of then that's where most, you know, a lot of women will say like that's their time of emotional eating is like when the job is done for the day, then they're on the couch eating the ice cream, the cookies, the chips, whatever. It's like they're like it becomes the reward. It becomes like it can be several factors. So it can be a reward. It can also be the punishment. It can just kind of be like, F it, I don't care.
Doesn't
I'm just
matter.
going to shove it in.
Right.
Yes. So and I think food is an easy one that comes up because it's so accessible. If you're a chronic dieter or if you've dieted or you have issues with your body, then you add that layer in. It could be, you know, I'm not taking care of myself or I'm off my diet. I'm being bad. I deserve this. It's all of that language that can get wrapped up in there, and to really look at how you use food and what your relationship with food is on top of then how are you taking care of yourself? Because what I find more often than not is women who struggle with emotional eating really have an emotional hunger. It's like emotional hunger, spiritual hunger. Like it's either both or one of the two. And a lot of times when we're looking at that emotional piece, it is looking at what needs are you not getting met emotionally? And I think, you know, when you're becoming a mom, especially if you're a new mom, or like as you're adding maybe more onto your family, or as more issues arise as your kids get older, it's just really looking at like, where is your self-care? Do you have outlets? Do you have support? Do you have boundaries? Like who's holding you up? Because you're holding everyone else up.
And one of the things that I hear from moms is that, you know, I don't have time for self-care, or I'm doing really well, everything's okay. And I think it's so important, you know, to remind moms as we're talking about this, that even when everything's okay and you're handling it, you still deserve a level of support and self-care. Like there's this I've got it face that we're putting forward like to the world, which is great, and we need to, and society tells us we have to. And then there's the focusing, like you're saying, like how are you doing? and giving yourself, I love the taking up space, because I do find we hear that all the time. Moms are trying to they don't even realize that they're making themselves smaller in terms of not mattering. Like somehow the needs of my kids must be first, and later I'm gonna matter. And what I hear you saying is we have to show up and matter now.
And that is being a good mom.
And that is being a good mom. Right.
Well, and I think too, like Kim, like you bring up such a great point, because I think it's almost like idolized, like to be like this super mom that can handle everything. And like, I can say that as like, I have been guilty of doing that. Like, I'm going to manage this, I'm going to do this. And then like inside I'm crumbling, and like, why am I in tears at 8 o'clock at night? Because I'm like, oh my God, I just do too much. So it's learning to like, yes, I will take your help. Yes, I will ask for your help. Yes, I will build my tribe of people who will support me. And I think that part's an important piece, that like, you don't have to do it all, because that's where you have to sit back and look at, where is it coming out sideways? Like face value, maybe you got it all together, but it's likely coming out sideways, either with food, shopping, other drinking. I mean, is it 4 o'clock yet? Like 5 o'clock yet? Like that's such a common thing. It's coming out somewhere because you're not getting what you need. And so those mechanisms are all numbing. They're all, I can just shut it off and I don't have to think about it for X amount of time, versus really looking at, but what are you really needing and needing to ask for and to take up the space to get?
And the other thing too, I wonder about is, what's so wrong with just needing to be numb without having to hurt ourselves? You know, like that time that we need to just shut off.
Yes.
And take a break. And, you know, because you can call it mindfulness, you can call it, which I totally agree with, but sometimes you just feel like you just need to zone, like not have anything.
And
right.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference, is that it's conscious, that there's the conscious act of, I need to just turn off, and I need to not think about anything. And I'm consciously making this decision that I will binge watch the series on Netflix or whatever I'm going to go and do, versus that just happening without realizing that that's what you're doing, I think that part becomes the difference, because I do think we need that. We can't be on all the time. We have to have periods of I'm off, I'm zoning
Mhm.
out or whatever. But I think the difference is, if we're looking at mental health, the difference is I'm consciously making the decision versus it's just I'm just numbing without
Or like,
realizing
oops,
that's what
I
I'm
didn't even
doing.
realize now the
Yeah.
bag is empty or whatever. Like,
Totally.
like an
Mhm.
oops, because
Yes.
then shame comes up and blame, and then it's like this really
Right.
vicious cycle when we do
Yeah.
what we did. Like,
Mhm.
do you find that with
Right.
people you work with?
Oh,
You know?
yes, a ton. Like shame is like the backpack that most of the women that I
Mhm.
work with carry. And I think that part, I think there's such an important piece for that, because if you're, at some point your kids start to see that. Like, I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many clients I see that it's like, oh, my mom was an emotional eater, or this is what my mom would do. Like, we're modeling a lot. Not that even if we do it, that we can't not help our daughters or sons even
Right.
have a healthy
Mhm.
relationship. But I think that part is they notice, like
Mhm.
in the same with I feel terrible about what I ate and I feel terrible about my body. Like, they notice that they are little sponges that are like, oh, okay,
Right.
then this is a value, then this is important. And I think those are parts of kind of looking at the messages that we might be saying, and even looking at what we might not be saying, or what we might not be talking about. Like, that's shaping how they view these things as well.
Mhm.
Like the idea of bad foods,
Mhm.
Yes.
and good foods.
Yep.
And one of the things that I really appreciate about the approach that you take, Shannon, is that, and like I said, I've worked with you, professionally. I've been a client of yours,
Mhm.
and I really appreciate that I never ever left feeling. I always left feeling way less shame than I walked in.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
have a really powerful way of taking of relieving folks of their shame as it relates to eating and food, and it's just the way
Mhm.
you talk about it. I mean, just talking to you this morning, I'm just reminded of like it's like that power that food and eating can have over folks that have a history of disordered eating or just are a woman living in the world,
Right.
like,
Yes.
you know you have so I'm wondering if you can kind of like, how does one talk about food and eating in a way that takes that power away, that negative charge away from it? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Um, I think a big part is like understanding maybe what you were taught, understanding that we live in a very disordered eating culture. So, and some of that then goes into like what's your attachment style, if there was trauma, why we might need the escape. Like, there's so many layers to it than just the face value of food. So like for me, like that's always what I'm trying to do, is help draw these connections of looking at like, well, of course you did that. Of course that felt good to do, or you needed that escape, or that it felt like you were following the rules and like that gave you control, or you needed to feel out of control. Like, it's understanding what the need is of either the dieting or of the binging or the emotional eating. It's understanding the why. So I think when we can kind of look at, if, for example, on the relationship with food, if I've been on chronic diets and I have certain foods that have been demonized, of course I feel like that I'm bad if I eat those, because diet culture has created this sense of morality, whether you're good or bad and how you're following. And when you're following it, it's almost like you get this like, yes, I am better than you
Yeah,
because I am not eating the bagel and you are. Like, it's
Mhm.
legitimately that's what happens.
the sense of morality around
Yes.
food. that's
Mhm.
that's big. That's important, I feel like.
So when
Mhm.
we're reshaping it, it's just really dropping in and taking, I'm always saying, like, just take the data. What does it tell you? Do you like it? Is it that you're more fearful of it? What would it be like to enjoy it? How is it for you? Then are you more satisfied? And then finding that you're not eating later. Like, it's helping to kind of look at, like, really curiously and holding a lot of compassion of, this is going to be hard. And of course, I'm going to be met with these thoughts, but like, can I see what this way will bring? Because I already know what road this leads to. So I think that's where we're kind of starting to unlock, you are not your body and you are not the plan of food that
Mhm.
you follow. Like, that is not who you
Huge.
are. And that's a huge piece. And this is
That's
where we
huge.
look at, it's this emotional and spiritual hunger, because
Mhm.
that is who I am. Like like I think we can have all these labels, but of looking at like, I'm this compassionate person and I'm a healer and I'm a helper, like that has nothing to do with my body, has nothing to do with how I eat. And so it's starting to help people find more of that, of when we take so much attention off of food and you're nourishing yourself and you're listening, what comes up? Let's be curious with it. Cause it's
Mhm.
taking up space. Like the food is taking up space that you should be taking up, or your body, so it's
Mm.
just learning
That's
to
huge.
uncover it.
Don't you love hearing this, Kim? Like it's
Yeah.
so important to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And giving moms that freedom to, to release all of those old patterns and to start to look at something new. And that idea that, food is taking up space, that, you can release that and you can step into whatever it is,
Yeah.
is important to you. Um, and I do think, right now, as people are kind of, as we're moving through this time and trying to figure things out, it sometimes feels like a discussion like this, because it's what I'm hearing from moms. It's like, okay, so that's a discussion for when things are going well. That we get to okay, really tease out what's happening around shame, and like somehow it's a privilege to be talking about freeing ourselves up when things are such a struggle in the world at the moment, and things are such a struggle in our homes at the moment. And so what I'm wondering is, how do we impress upon moms, how do we let them know and help them give themselves permission that you get to right now, even when things seem really hard, take care of you around all of this.
Mhm.
Because it is an interesting time when people are like, okay, so we're preparing for something, or we've got all this pressure, and we're like, we can't, I don't think we can wait until this is over. I think we have to be caring for ourselves like nobody's business right now. Like
Yep.
this is the time to boost our immune systems and get ourselves, as healthy as we can be, mind, body, and spirit, in the midst of all of this stuff that's happening. And so
Yeah.
what are some things you would suggest?
Well, so I think, like when you say that, like I'm thinking though too, like, does that feel like pressure? Does that feel like pressure of like, what if I don't want a salad and my greens for lunch, but I want
Mm-hmm.
to eat these plate of cookies? Like, what if
Mm-hmm.
I want to do that? And I think there's a part of looking at, if you can, like all through quarantine, I've been really big with just having a lot of compassion for what comes up, because I think emotional eating and food playing a million roles and inserting emotionally has been a huge piece. So I
Mm-hmm.
think there's an element of looking at, sometimes food is going to be the self-care, and it's going to be emotional eating. It's not to
Mm-hmm.
demonize it, it's not to make it bad, but understanding sometimes that's what you need, and that is okay.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
think it's looking at um how you're dealing with it. And I think people who tend to have more mental health issues, history of trauma, have had it's been significantly harder. So to kind of look at, what are these small steps you can take to help crawl yourself out of kind of that darkness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where, certainly on the food end, a lot of what I talk about is like set up structure of when you're eating, and eat with your kids. Like, even if it means you're eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with your kids with Cheez-Its and an Oreo, great. You ate lunch. Like, it's not, because I think sometimes it's the preparation piece, and it doesn't have to be
Yes.
so hard.
Yeah.
It's
Mm-hmm.
okay. And like, sometimes like kid food's good. So if you want it, have it. Like, rather than have where you're wanting and then be eating it off the scraps off their plate, because that's like this unconscious, unmindful eating. And not that every eating time is going to be super mindful. The ideal is that it's pretty mindful, but like, try to connect in. Like, what do you want? Can you include your kids into making things? Like, I have certainly doled a lot of stuff that drives me crazy, of like household things, to my children. I'm like, now you are doing this, and now you're doing this, because I'm like, I feel a little bit of freedom. Like, this feels good. I
Mm-hmm.
think there's parts of looking at, can you create some structure that serves you, and to know some days are going to be hard to do that, and that's okay. But we all thrive off of structure, which is part of why we're kind of all spinning with this, is because our daily structure is no longer like we're stuck at home all day, and food kind of becomes the segues. But I think that part can be a really helpful piece, and learning, can you move your body? Can you just have fun with it? Like, I have found that play has been such an important aspect that more of us need, myself included. And just to look at, like, when we've been so sheltered down, literally, it's hard to access those parts. But then as moms, we have these like little beings, these little souls that are like, play, 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 joy, joy. So can we kind of connect to some of that and look at what that brings? Because that's another source of nourishment.
Ooh, yeah,
Absolutely. And I think that, the structure, there is freedom to that structure, even when it's very basic structure. So we're not saying that, you have to put in place like a back-to-back plan. But if and I know for me, when I take on, Saturdays, as I'm making my list for the week of what food we're going to get in that we need, and then how the week might go, my weeks, I feel better knowing, because I don't have to worry or think as much about the whole food thing when there's a little bit of structure in place. And so, I'm not perfect with it. I'm always working on it. And I know that like the weeks when all of a sudden it's Monday and I don't have things planned, then the whole week is off until I get that. Sometimes I'll even take like, okay, Monday afternoon, because I didn't get it done. For me, it's really a Sunday thing. So knowing that like, okay, I'm, prepping and looking over my week and putting in some meal structure, because it does seem like a lot of our lives revolve around the meal structure. So instead of, and learning a long time ago from a coach that I worked with, like, stop avoiding that. It just is. So, okay. So then if our lives revolve around the eating structure and then the eating, and you put structure into it, it does create some freedom. So you're not having to get all bogged down with it.
It does. And I think too, like, incorporate your kids. Like, I have each kid pick what they want for a meal that week. So then I'm not having to like brainstorm. So sometimes like we're having hot dogs and mac and cheese. Like, that's just what we're having. Like, it's part of that is kind of looking at the ways that I can include taking care of myself, as well as not having to feel bogged down. Because I think a lot of moms, I mean, I know that I do. It's like, oh my God, I'm so sick of thinking about what I'm going to eat every single dinner.
Exactly.
Yeah, they want to get, the people in my house, they want to eat like 3 meals a day, every day.
Yeah.
I'm like, I just fed you dinner last night. Like, you want it again? Like, it's like, and since the lockdown and everything, it's like, people are cooking breakfast, lunch, and dinner now. Like, I know that's not rocket science that I just figured that out, but like,
it's a lot.
Like, they keep wanting more food. And so, so I can see how like your relationship with food can be, if your relationship with food is fraught before quarantine, you're really being confronted with all of that even more.
Yeah, I think if you had inklings in the past and maybe you were in a better spot, there were things that definitely came up. For some, it was, if things were struggling, it amplified things. And for some, they kind of discovered these new things, which is part of why, I wanted to offer something when hopefully, God willing, the kids go back to school, that there's some space to be able to kind of really work on that and to kind of look at what went up. And I think that, we were met with a lot of potential shame opportunities with like, see how long you can hold a plank for the next 30 days. I'm like, I don't even want to do that. Like, or I made this and this and this. And it's like, okay, but I'm picking up Chick-fil-A tonight. Like, like, it's looking at what was met of, now's the opportunity for this whole new life. And it's like, but we're in the middle of this traumatic event that our central nervous systems are like, shut down. So I think there's a part of like really being able to create a space to talk about that and kind of really process what was going on and how that was showing up. And to look at, it's a beautiful opportunity to be able to look at like what was going on with food, and maybe it filling holes that were really normal. Like it was fun, it was pleasure, it's excitement, but also was it escape, numbing, just boredom. Like some of it is certainly, can we bring a lot of compassion to understanding that more?
Yeah. I think the compassion piece is huge.
Huge.
The compassion piece is like treating yourself like you would treat a friend versus like vilifying or disciplining yourself.
Yeah, completely.
Like, hey, it's okay. Like we had, okay, maybe you made a choice you didn't really want to make, or, you feel like you didn't, get the do the things you wanted to do or eat the foods you wanted to eat. Okay, we'll try again tomorrow. Or I say a lot of times treating yourself like you would treat your kids, because that usually really wakes moms up. Like I would never talk to my kids like I talk to myself around food.
Yeah, and there's this oh gosh, Elizabeth, you said something and I may have lost it. So there you go. There's my brain on this whole, I was thinking about how we as a society and just in general, we're always kind of waiting for someday. And then to do whatever that thing is, whether we're freeing ourselves up or we're making a change, or we're going to be healthy someday, or we're going to, and during this quarantine time, it's made it really has pushed that, okay, well, someday, like, but there's no end. Well, there is an end, but maybe there isn't an end, or maybe there doesn't need to be an end, but we're all in this, like, trying to, that's where we're caught. You're right. In this ambiguous space. Right. And and sometimes the last thing that happens in that ambiguity is caring for ourselves. Until, like Shannon said, or when you can put some structure in, and it can be very basic structure. It doesn't have to be elaborate. And I love the idea that we can have, we can eat whatever we want to eat. And especially when you've got little kids, my husband and I are now mostly empty nesters. So it's just the two of us right now. And so, we have all this choice and freedom. And still, you have to make a decision about what to eat. That's just annoying. I really wish there was like a menu fairy who just came in and planned the menus, and and it'd be great if that fairy also did the shopping
and the cooking,
and then maybe the meal prep, right? Like, I still would like, but
like a dining hall, like in college.
You
just show up and you have lots of choices, and some are healthy. Or see, here I go again. Some are whole foods, maybe some are more comfort foods, whatever. I know I need to be mindful of my language, but I kind of missed the dining hall in college.
Yeah, because there was always choice, lots of choices. And I wasn't responsible then for creating the choices, where now I am responsible for creating all of the choices, or, depending on, what your role is with food in your house, which for most moms, it falls on, we're the ones having to make all the choices. Because even when my kids were living here and we had everybody together for part of this until May-ish. And my kids are older, 20 and 24. But and with my husband, I'm like, so what do you want to eat? Like, if you could eat anything, what would you eat? And people are like, I don't know. And so there's also that, like, okay, well, I guess we should have some vegetables. We should have some this. We should have, so even in this, in what seems like so much freedom of choice is this should, which, is, again, more of that pressure. And so
it is. But that's, so some of the work is, an intuitive eater is actually a really nutritious eater, because those are the foods that make your body feel really good. So like, that's where it's like, it's always taking data, like take data, like, how do you feel when you have, let's say, like a hot dog and macaroni and cheese and no vegetable? Like, does your body feel good? Does it feel bad? Does it feel bloated, gassy? Like, all of that is data that your body is telling you whether it works or not. And you don't have to be absolute, but maybe it's like, okay, I'm going to have the hot dog with some macaroni and cheese, and then I'm going to make a salad, or I'm going to have a side vegetable, because I feel like my body just feels better. And that's the difference. Because if I'm shifting it to be asking, how do I feel? Not up here, but my body, what data is my body giving me? That's where my answers lie. And we're taught to just stay up here. And so that's the difference is, I can be like, well, that was really yummy and that was great. You know, it's like maybe it reconnects me to being a kid and that was fun. Like, you know, versus like, you know, whatever the next, and I'm kind of big with like the next night, if it's your choice and your kids aren't wanting to eat it, it's kind of a nice thing to be like, okay, well, last night was your choice and now tonight's mine. So this is what we're having for dinner. Like it kind of can help mitigate some of the food battles, and it's their choice of whether to eat it or not. Like it's, but that's a whole other conversation, but like, you know, but I think those are pieces of just listening to how you feel. And if you are continuing to eat a food that doesn't make your body feel good, then what's the why? Why are you doing that?
Yeah, I really, when I was learning about intuitive eating, I thought it was really interesting to, you know, when we get in the habit of listening to ourselves, you know, we have to get quiet and we have to really listen and kind of get out of old habits maybe. And what I learned eventually was like, there were some times where I'm like, I want some sugar. My body wants some sugar, and that's okay. Yes. But I also learned that like, I think my body needs some protein. And then I had some choices about how to get that protein. Or I feel like my body needs some cold vegetables, or, and that sounds weird, but like, that's what my body need, you know, and when you think about what your body needs and then you provide that for your body, in addition to however your body feels after consuming that food, I think the act of providing for yourself feels really good.
Right, because that's permission. It's giving yourself permission, which is a huge piece. And that is a integral part of intuitive eating.
Yeah. Well, this has been so refreshing to remind myself of all of these concepts. I mean, I don't know about you, but I needed to hear it. I needed to be, I just needed to be talking about it in this way. I'm so glad that we had this opportunity to chat with you. All of your info is in the comments of this discussion, so folks can look you up. Did you have something going on that specifically that you wanted to let us know about? Was there a specific...
So August 28th, it's Friday, I'm starting a 12-week online group. It's going to go from 9 to 10:30 on Friday mornings, where it's all about food in quarantine, but then also helping to look at your relationship with food. It's going to be group work, working through the intuitive eating workbook, as well as videos. And I think it'll be just a very timely need of discussion.
And can folks get more information on your Facebook page, on your website?
So it's on my Facebook page as well as my website under events.
Awesome.
Okay. And what is your Facebook page? I know it's going to be in there, but what's the name of your Facebook page, Shannon?
It's Hayes Nutrition.
Okay. Excellent. Well, this has been great.
Yeah, thank you so much.
The reminder to give ourselves permission and a little bit of structure and check in with how your body's feeling. So all really great things for all areas of wellness, you know, so it's about that, you know, food, which plays a big role, but just in general, our well-being. So thank you so much for being with us today, Shannon.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
It was good seeing everybody. Take care of yourself this week, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for another Facebook Live with a special guest.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.